What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Bulls Latest as we kick off yet another week here in the NBA offseason. I wanted to start today's show by diving into some of the analytics in terms of the Bulls' defensive play a year ago and how they could improve that and what they could do to jump to the next level when it comes to some of their defensive statistics there. A fatal defensive flaw of this team that I wanted to start today's show with is that the fact that through the first month of last year in the 2024-25 season, the Bulls own the league's 13th best offense, but ranked just 29th on defense. Sure, their faster pace played a role, but the bigger issue was a failure to disrupt opponents to force them out of rhythm. Now, this is something when you look at the Bulls game as a whole, it showed up on multiple occasions throughout the season, very consistently, actually. Over this time span, the Bulls ranked 27th in steals and 30th in opponents' turnovers. As the season progressed, Chicago's defense improved, but only marginally. Come the All-Star break, the Bulls placed 27th in defensive rating, 26th in steals, and 28th in opponents' turnovers. Following the All-Star break, Chicago's defense took another step forward, ranking 10th in defensive rating, though still just 20th in steals and 25th in opponent turnovers. Ultimately, jumping from 27th to 10th in defensive rating is significant, but the Bulls' lack of defensive playmaking remained glaring. I think bringing in Okoro doesn't necessarily help that make those metrics. I think Lonzo Ball, obviously, I talked about this a bit ago in a few episodes here, but Lonzo Ball was the guy who really generated most of the steals for this organization. So flipping him for Okoro will take that number back. Josh Giddey will make an impact, but I think that is definitely still something that is a flaw for this Bulls team. And kind of spinning off that, the Bulls are in the bottom of the league in forcing turnovers. They're one of the NBA's worst teams in doing so. The Bulls relied on sound technical defense more so, holding opponents to just 45.5% from the floor, which was fifth in the NBA. That's a good analytic for this team. And 34.3% from three-point range, which is third in the NBA. So they're doing well in that aspect of the defensive side of the game, yet their inability to truly disrupt opposing offenses leaves little margin for error. And when you go through an 82-game season, that is something, when you look at the numbers, that is a little worrisome for this Bulls team coming up this upcoming season. When opponents shot efficiently as they did early in the season, ranking 21st in field goal percentage allowed, Chicago's defense suffered. You'd think the Bulls would aim to improve their defensive playmaking this offseason, right? But that's not quite been the case. Going back to Isaac Okoro here, he's an impressive point of attack defender, but he's never averaged more than a steal per game in any season, and that's something I threw at you guys a little bit ago. Just kind of looking back on that Lonzo Ball trade. Josh Giddey getting locked up is big for that part of the Bulls game, and I'll say that again here, is that he's very significant to kind of helping those numbers kind of stay where they are and improve. He's the one who should carry that side of the game for the Bulls. I think Isaac Okoro will be a solid player, but he definitely is a work in progress defensively, and I think you're going to see that early on as this next season kicks off here. So, kind of just looking at, and I know we've done a few of these, but we're inching closer to the start of training camp here. Training camp opens in 2 weeks here, so we're really closing in on that. 2 Mondays from now, the Bulls will be back in action at the Advocate Center. The Bulls aren't entirely out of the question, just when you look at their upcoming season and what projects to be a down Eastern Conference, they're not out of the question for making a postseason run here. I just think ultimately that may lead the front office to make yet another decision that won't sit well with Bulls fans, and that's be buyers at the deadline this year rather than sellers. Now, I know I've talked about Vooch a ton during my show here since it started in May, but I think if the Bulls contend enough and they win enough ball games, the Bulls could end up looking to add talent instead of dumping a guy like Nikola Vucevic, who I've been thinking they would get rid of a long time ago, quite frankly, in this offseason. I don't think that would sit well with Bulls fans if they became buyers all of a sudden. Most NBA logic would go against making that call. This team hasn't made the playoffs since 21-22, and it's kind of retooled its roster. It's seen exits of Lonzo Ball, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, and Caruso over the last couple of years here. Nikola Vucevic may be on his way out any day now as well. Who the heck knows what they're going to do with him? I predict that he will start this upcoming season. I mean, we're only weeks away from the upcoming season kicking off here. So I think he will remain here for the foreseeable future. But as we inch closer to February, who knows what's going to happen? I just think when you look at this Bulls roster, they have 13 players age 25 or younger, including current cornerstones Josh Giddey, who's 22, and then Modest is 20 years old. So that's a solid roster. It also features, a solid roster in terms of young guys at least, but that roster also kind of includes 6 unrestricted free agents that could both impact the immediate and long-term futures of the Chicago Bulls. Kobe White being one of those coming up here. That's a guy I've continued to talk about. I think he's critical to keep around with Josh Giddey, but that doesn't mean the franchise will willingly punt on this upcoming season. A push to acquire talent rather than ship it out for future assets could be in the cards. I would not be surprised if the Bulls switch gears again, get a taste of what it's like to kind of contend in the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference is going to have a down year. There's a lot of injuries, so you could see the Bulls make a push. I think Chicago's going to see what this group can do in a down Eastern Conference where the Bulls have kind of been trending more in a rebuildy type way. Chicago does still fancy itself as a team that could make some noise in the East, at least in the play-in conversation, as they've been very comfortable in getting into the last couple of years since that format rolled out. So I think if things break the right way, though, for this Bulls team, and this is some positive spin to it, if this breaks the right way, and some of these young players and head coach Billy Donovan really start pushing and making some things happen here, that could lead to a relatively competitive squad. Ultimately, as you remember, Chicago did go 17-10 post All-Star break this past season. That was a bright spot for this squad. And that's something they hope to build on in terms of momentum moving into this next season. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. What's your outlook on this Bulls team? Do you want them to contend in the Eastern Conference? Would you rather them just go full in and rebuild? Do you want it to be a rebuild year? I'd be interested to know what your guys' takes are. It'd be interesting to hear kind of the different philosophies from Bulls fans out there. I'm kind of in the middle. I want to see the Bulls get back to the postseason, but I want them to set themselves up well for the future and for years to come. And I think they've done a good job, like I've talked about, kind of stacking assets in terms of the financials, being able to load up on some big-time players next offseason here in free agency during the summer when all those big moves go down post-NBA Finals. So we'll see. I mean, I think it'll be a fun year. I think the Bulls will be competitive at the Eastern Conference. Also, I've talked about it many times, but all those injuries are going to kind of keep things wide open here in the Eastern Conference. So we'll see what happens with this group. I wanted to wrap up today's show with some NBA news and just kind of keep you in the know on what's going on around the league. Obviously, I talked about the Eurobasket tournament in the final and the bronze medal game going on this yesterday, actually on Sunday. Germany defeated Turkey 88-83 yesterday in the gold medal game at the European Championship. Isaac Bonga scored a team best 20 points. Germany's first Eurobasket title since 1993, so that's exciting for them. And that comes just 2 years after the team won the World Cup title in 23. So that Germany squad's on quite the run in international competition. Franz Wagner scored 18 points for them. Dennis Schroeder added 16 points and 2 assists there. Germany finished the tournament 9-0, so they went on quite the run. And then in the bronze medal game there, Greece beat Finland 92-89 to win the bronze. Giannis Antetokounmpo coming out and saying this was his greatest achievement in his basketball career. So that was interesting there, given that he was an NBA champion not too long ago with the Milwaukee Bucks. But he does take a lot of pride in playing for Greece and with his brother there, Kostas. So I'm not surprised that he said that, but so Greece takes home the bronze. Turkey had a very solid tournament as well, earning silver. I've talked about them a bunch. Kind of recapping this tournament, very solid country when it comes to what they're doing in the basketball circles here. Alperen Sengun had 28 points for Turkey in the gold medal game in which they ultimately dropped, taking the silver home there. So we also had some news kind of, I'm not surprised. I think this thing's going to go back and forth, but with that whole, no-show job with Kawhi Leonard, there was an ex-Aspiration CEO that denied Kawhi Leonard had a no-show deal. So it goes against everything that we've heard to this point. It'll be interesting to see how this thing unfolds, but there's going to be plenty of back and forth in terms of when this thing is finally going to get sorted out. So, want to keep you guys up to date on that. But that ex CEO denied any involvement with the no show deal, and really there wasn't one. But the signals out there state that Kawhi definitely got involved in something there. So we'll have to wait and see. The Wizards and they had a guard, Bilal Coulibaly. He underwent surgery Friday in New York City to repair a ligament tear in his right thumb. He's likely to miss time into the regular season. This player sustained the injury with the French national team during Eurobasket, so unfortunate for Washington there. I never want to see guys get hurt in competition like that as the season is right around the corner. He's the former, when you look at Bilal Coulibaly, he's the former 7th overall pick by the Indiana Pacers in 2023. So this guy was drafted very high a couple years ago. He started 59 games for Washington a year ago, is going to be a part of what they're going to try and do moving forward with the very young roster. So there's some significant news for an Eastern Conference opponent there, and a Chicago Bulls team that a team that the Bulls are going to want to watch here moving into this next season. So overall, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on what your outlook is for the Bulls. Honestly, I'm curious to hear, where things stand with you guys, and I'm certainly excited. I mean, training camp opening up in 2 weeks. We're right around the corner. Going to finally have some actual basketball, game content right around the corner for you guys as well. So certainly excited to get the games rolling out here very shortly as well. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for joining me on another episode of Bulls Latest to start this week, and we will see you guys tomorrow.